All right. Well, welcome to everybody. I hope you guys are really blessed. I enjoyed today the conversation I had with a couple of wonderful people that are hearing the truth and it's affecting their life. And not only that, but they're taking that and they're affecting other people's lives. And so that's what the whole thing is all about, friends. And so I'm going to speak a little bit about that. Made a comment the other night, and as I grow and learn about the creation of our words and how we are creating our reality, we're just not at all aware of what we're doing. And as long as you're not aware of what you're doing a lot of things with no knowledge of it. And so in the spiritual metaphysical realm, the only way that you can really see the way is to be able to perceive things. And it's said often of Yeshua about perception. And so I had made a comment about, that everything is always here, it's always present, it always has been, and it always will be. The only thing that allows us to interact and to move and to grow and all of that is when we begin to perceive. And of course, if you understand the word perception, you understand that in a form it really has the connotations of being able to see, but at some measures almost really more see with the heart to perceive something. You don't even need to see the picture, you just have a knowing. But it is a form of seeing, and has always been very used among spiritual people, and it is becoming more and more prominent, just as your intuition, which is the voice of your higher self. And what's really amazing is people say that they want to hear their higher self and all of this, and then the higher self speaks, and they say, "No, I don't want to hear what you don't have to say. I'm not resonating with you." And so it goes on constantly, folks. In fact, if you could view that that reality, you would actually be amazed at how often you walk by the higher self that you say that you're looking for. And so it's quite powerful, because if you get hung in that dog loop, then you just get to run round and round and round and round and round while you convince yourself you're going somewhere. In reality, you haven't moved at all. And that's okay for all of us, because we've all been in it, and we probably all will be in it again. But it certainly isn't the thing that you want to aspire to, if I could say it like that. And so this concept of perception, I spoke a word. I said things are always around us, but we don't perceive them. And it was absolutely amazing. Less than 15 minutes later, I'd been 3 places, and all 3 places were talking about perception. And so I don't know how you deal with the universe, but that's a clear giveaway to me that Source is speaking, and that is a word that I need to focus on. And it often happens, and there's always a blessing, but also a lesson. And sometimes the lessons, they're the biggest blessings, but they don't so much always feel like a blessing. And but we don't learn really unless we really get put in pressure. And I know that may be cliche. Some of you may believe it, some of you may not. Every mystic that I've ever met certainly believes that. And so you just have to go with what your path and what you're capable of allowing to collapse into your reality, because that really is how reality is created. It's already happening. Whatever is collapsing in your reality is what you created yesterday. And so that fundamental truth is so huge and overwhelming, it's really not even funny, but you'd be amazed at how many people refuse to believe that. Because if you begin to believe that, then you begin to pay attention. And of course, that's the thing that is the difference between consciousness and unconsciousness, is paying attention. And so I said it to a friend of mine I was talking to today in a relatively long conversation, and I said, it's quite amazing to me. I use more scriptures now, I think. I don't know that it's possible, but at least with a smile, I use more scriptures now than I did before. And I do look at this, and so I guess this is yet again maturing and morphing and going back in. And I fully realized that many of the things that I taught were so outside of Christianity. That's why they were so weird to people to hear, even in Christianity, because they're so far away from what the thing is. And I often would see things, and yet I couldn't make sense of them because nobody was doing them, nobody knew anything about them, nobody wanted to hear about them, and that used to kind of cause me a little consternation with people. As long as you preached a message and made everybody feel good and patted them on the head as they walked out the back door, they would continue to give. And man, I just saw a long time ago that there's got to be so much more to this than all of that. And of course I was right. There is. If I could, I perceived it. I knew that it was true, but it hadn't. The reality of it hadn't exploded yet, if you would. And so, obviously, Source is trying to bring perception to people, the ability for them to see what they can't otherwise see that is right in front of their face. And if you want to know the honest truth, some of the greatest perception that we need is to see ourselves. There seems to be a lot of struggle. I watch people how they act a lot when words get said. Oftentimes I throw words out there simply to watch people react. And you learn a lot when you do that because you get to see then the true person, not the one that their avatar. And most people are not even aware, so how can they intentionally show it to you? They really can't, even if they want to. And so the concept that came to me, I went, okay, well then if perception is where Source is wanting us to go, and I know what my journey and my path with perception is, that is to say that you have a picture in your mind that you believe is reality, and as time goes along, maybe something happens and all of a sudden you see that what you perceived, what you thought was reality, isn't reality at all. And if that does happen and is happening to some of you, and so I'll speak more in a forward movement, and that would be that if you are creating an environment for yourself where awakening and awareness is in front of you, and when I say that, you can get into lots of mystical teachings about in front of you, behind you, and where you are now, and that is true, and yet at the same time, where you are now is because of yesterday, not because of today. And for some of you, that may be, some of this blows some of these people's opinions and theories out of the water massively. Because if you could function and create today the day that you want, then every day would be exactly what you wanted. And it seldom works like that. There are situations and times when you are in perfect alignment with Source and you're functioning in your frequency and coherence with Source, and you can get things that occur almost instantaneously. I believe as we go forward, I would expect for that to become more. But for me, and maybe for some of you that aren't the gifted elite, maybe you're in a journey and sometimes you get put to the test, and things that you desire, which is really everything that we should want, should be ours. And so another Christian scripture, God will give you the desires of your heart. And I've heard a lot of different Christian messages about that, friends, but to be quite honest with you, it's not a Christian message at all. That is the reality that you create. And your higher self, your consciousness, and the collective consciousness, which are one, are the things that bring your desires into reality. So that is a very true statement. If you can bring to terms the whole concept of God being something that's inside of you. And it's funny, I had an eye appointment today, and I got to speak with an eye surgeon, and it was kind of strange all the way around. And he walked back in the room and he said, "So you're a preacher?" He said, "What denomination and what is it that, you know?" And of course, it was a very short conversation, simply because I laid in a few simple truths, the truths that are out there. And of course, it didn't resonate. So it's all wonderful, friends. There's so much. It's okay for the people that don't, and it's okay for the people that do. It's okay. We are all sovereigns and all of these things, and they are very much true. Now, as a collective, people have to understand that when you're a sovereign and I am a sovereign, you have no right or authority to come into my sovereign realm. And the same. And I watch people, that's why you hear a lot of teachings now about boundaries, because there are a lot of unconscious people who have a piece of knowledge that says I'm sovereign, and they think that now it's okay for them to get in my space instead of staying out of my space and staying in their space. That's what a sovereign does. They not only rule their space, they stay out of other people's space. And so that's going to become a thing that you're going to see, which calls for what? It calls for being conscious of every situation, every day, every minute, every thought, every behavior, every attitude, every action. And that makes for something that's less than just doing whatever it is that you think is okay. The Bible tells us that people do what they think is right in their own eyes. It doesn't tell you that what they're doing is right. It just simply says this is the nomenclature and the way humans function. They only think about themselves and they do whatever they think is right. And so that is true, but when you bring consciousness into that concept, then all of a sudden you are doing those things that are right for you, but you're also not impeding into someone else's sovereign kingdom, because then you become a trespasser. And we need to be very conscious of that. There are many people that function mindlessly in other people's sovereignty, and they have no concept of it. And so what it does is it brings a very strong need for humility and a very strong need for conscious awareness. And awareness is one of the greatest assets of a spiritual person. You must function in awareness. You must be aware of your behavior. Everybody propagates this to people in the concept of being aware of other behavior, and the reality is the most important facet of awareness is that you are conscious of you, not of other people, because whatever's going on, you're creating in your past already. So we need to be careful. But perception, what does it mean to perceive? How does this all play out, and how does it look like, and what power, what benefit might come of it? To those of you who I talked to today that had the conversation with the gentleman, and he was absolutely blown away. I hope that you will continue to do that, because that is what we're called to, and without it, you really are doing nothing for the kingdom. And I won't say that there's a bad thing about not doing anything for the kingdom, but there's a bad thing for not doing anything for the kingdom. We weren't put here just to have a light bulb, and so we're going to see that. And so in Matthew chapter 5, verse 14 through 16, in the wonderful Bible that the truth still lives in, we find an amazing concept here. And it's so fundamental to believe, and yet when it is corrupted, it really has no value. And most people in the religious realm, organized religion, have heard this, and yet it means nothing to them. They don't even know what that would be. And I've heard lots of preachers, and they're doing pretty good trying to get that point across, even if the reality of what was trying to be said is not quite there. If their heart is right, they're trying to tell people that you can be more than what you are. And I think that's always an appropriate message, whether it comes from a Christian pulpit or whether it comes from somebody on a street corner or in a grocery store. It's really irrelevant where truth comes. The universe, source, higher self is constantly extracting reality and truth everywhere that you go. You should expect to be seeing it, and if you're not expecting to see it, that's why you're not seeing it. And so that would get into some of the pieces about manifestation and creation that we must deal with, that if we are constantly the ones that are creating, then we have the power, if we will, we have the power to begin to create something that is beautiful and is in line with universe and higher self. And so I've begun to recognize that one of the pieces, it seems like things get better faster when I intentionally, in awareness, invite higher self to come. And there's been a longing, there's a focus more, and I will just tell you those that haven't ever experienced supernatural acts, that is to say healings and such things, that we have really been robbed, and we miss a lot of truths because we don't understand that this creation process that everyone's talking about, whether it be manifestation on television or whether it's somebody like myself sitting here telling someone that you do have the capacity to manifest good things and be blessings, but the reality is that we are manifesting what we are focused on. The problem may often be what you're focusing on. And so for those that are coming to perception, one way that you would do that would be you would begin where you may have been mindless about what you're creating. You know, if you're ignorant, you're still creating. That's the problem with this thing. And the universe doesn't much care about the way that we do about morality. The universe, if a bad person is in alignment, the universe will bring to pass what that person is focused on. And so when I say focus, man, this is a really huge piece. But perception of focus is a step even further than that, because now it's not just us focusing on something, it's us focusing on something intentionally that is positive and beneficial and for the good, and not just self and not just mindless. And unfortunately, there's lots of people functioning in a mindless realm. They are focused on something because everybody focuses on something, but the something is the thing that we really have to turn our focus on as well. What is it that I am focusing on? And so this is a piece, and it's really huge. I probably won't have time to get through this and the other piece that I wanted to go through, but I think that there'll be a blessing for someone out there. Whoever that someone is, I say take it and run. Whoever it is, that it sinks deep in your heart, and weeks and days from now when you think about this, and it will come back and it will energize you again if it causes you to grow. If truth doesn't do anything for you, friend, either you're out of balance or it wasn't truth. Truth always affects truth seekers in a positive light, and I don't necessarily, we use that term, but I think I'm really saying a little more than most people think when I say truth seeker. I'm not really seeking for the truth. The truth is all around us. I'm simply desirous to open my eyes and see more of the truth. That's a better way to say it. And so the way I say that is by saying I am seeking the truth. And so in Matthew chapter 5, the whole book of Matthew, as anybody who's been with me knows, I love the book of Matthew. I don't know how many thousands of messages I taught out of Matthew, and it never quit giving goods. And it still is. Not that I think that Matthew was the man of God or that it's even correct. It's so corrupt by Christianity, it's not funny. But it's not the corruption that I'm drawn to, it's the truth that I'm drawn to. And so in Matthew 5, verses 14 through 16, for you Bible followers, if I could go through the old pattern. If you have your Bible and want to follow along with me tonight, we're looking in Matthew chapter 5. And so Jesus tells his followers, he says, you are the light of the world. You are the light of the world. Now, I'd like for you to in logic and reason and focus, try to grab a hold of. Do you think that these people were conscious of what was going on in them, and that's why Jesus told them that, right? Would that be your perception? Is, oh, well, those people were fully awake, they were fully energized, they were fully focused, they were fully in alignment, they were fully coherent, vibrating with the frequency of God, and so he needed to tell them that they were light. Is that what you're trying to get out of that? I don't think most people probably would believe that for a New York second. The reality of it and why is this applicable to us? Because we are those people. And when you begin to perceive, the perception of yourself is the greatest tool there is for you to go forward. Okay? In fact, I will say very kindly, if you are imperceptive, you're going nowhere. You're just standing there beating at the air, as Paul said, and Paul also was very much talking about spiritual things when he talked about people who beat against the air. He's talking about people who are going nowhere. Spiritually, they consider themselves to be this great God, and on the other side, they're doing absolutely nothing for the kingdom. Listen, folks, in case you don't know it, there is the greatest rate of spirit beings from other realms. For the first time in your life, you would have heard this probably. As far as I know, for the first time in at least since Atlantis, there is starting to be much evidence of spirit beings who are coming in, because whether you know it or not, we are enlightening at some levels. But the things that I've been sharing with you that have been spoken for hundreds and thousands of years and even weeks and days are coming to pass. We are enlightening it. Those that are enlightened are enlightening more, and those who are awakening are increasing enlightenment. The problem is that apparently we are, as if I could say it, we are way behind where we should be at this time. Humanity. Okay, we are not as far in the evolution as we should have been. And so for the first time, we're starting to see things that you guys would have probably never imagined. So for some of you, I was the first person to ever tell you with authority about reincarnation, and that we do it, and that we've come back 1,000 times, and all of the other things. Well, I would like to inform you that it is starting to become more and more often that spirit beings who are already enlightened spirit beings from outer realms are starting to come. If any of you end up in a situation and a spirit comes to you and asks you, will you give up your body? You then have to make a decision, and of course you must do that in purity. And if you're ready to leave, then by all means, please do give your body over to them. But we are now starting to see not birth incarnations, we're starting to see spirit beings that are coming into grown bodies so that they can be right now active on this earth, because the light at this point is still in the middle of this huge battle between the darkness that's trying to overshadow it. So you can take that or not take it. I mean, that's your business, but there's things that are happening too often. And why are we needing to do that? Why are people, if you will look, there is many things that were taught and really fluffy and empty that were being fed to people spiritually. And if you will open your eyes, you will perceive that much of that stuff is already starting to fall away because it was fake. It never was right. If they gave you any truth, it was only a part of the truth. Okay? And so you believed it and felt good and thought you were going with the enlightenment flow, and come to find out you were actually on the wheel spinning, going round, going nowhere with half truths. I still see this amongst people that are speaking, and I've really been blessed, and maybe some of you will, if you don't now, you will come to the value and see why it is, and I'm very thankful that Source, I feel like, propagated me to do so, because what you have gotten to be spoken to you out of the Nag Hammadi text, 99% of the spiritual people have no knowledge of it whatsoever. In fact, the only two that I know of are Dr. Greg Lipton and Greg Braden are the only ones that are talking about the Nag Hammadi text. Why? Because they read them. Why was it important for you to read it? Because once you know how this realm functions and what creation really was, you don't have to be deceived unless you want to be. And many people want to be. Still, it's a choice. And so Yeshua says, he tells his followers, you are the light of the world. And so if they didn't know that, then did it immediately happen the minute that he said it? or had it always been? And if you understand where I'm going from what I've said already, and I think you should be able to, then you would understand that we have always been the light. And yet, we have no knowledge of it because we have no perception of it. You'll hear him say, and just so you know, what the concept is really deep and heavy and huge, but you'll hear him say it all the time. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. That is the fullness of your perception, okay? And so Yeshua is telling his disciples, there's nothing that tells us that all the people who heard him immediately began to see it. In fact, it's highly possible that maybe other than Mary, there might not have been but one disciple at that point that actually saw what he was talking about. Okay? Mary knew. Mary was much advanced of all of the other disciples, if you would. And so Yeshua tells us that, and the beauty of that is that it comes down to us in this day if we can open our minds and receive it. And so he says, you are the light of the world. And of course, then that's where the narrative of Christianity begins to write the story. And that's the story, dear friends, that we were taught. What does light mean? I promise you they never... You would get run out and be hard-pressed not to get run out of most Christian churches if you went into a Christian church and stood up on testimony time and told them that you are God incarnate and your light is the divine light of source. I think all of you know you would not be in that church for much. The deacons would gladly escort you out of the building. Please never come back again. And yet, are you wrong or are you right? So why is perception? Perception is valuable because it helps you to know what you know and to be able to see. But perception is also a tool that we can use for other people, okay? Source gave me a deadline like he always does, that this is something I need you to look at. And so, okay, I got it. I said the words, they came out of my mouth. Now, whether y'all know it or not, I probably brought from the other realm those other things that came that talked about perception by speaking about perception. And maybe you haven't begun to see that you really are I go through my spells where I fight depression. I go through my spells where I have doubt untold. And yet there's one thing that I've found about Source. Source always gives me time to go through that, and then comes and very quickly pulls me out of it. And he desires to do the same. The universe, the energy, the cosmic power desires to do the same for you. So if you're here and you've been one that have doubt, maybe you still doubt. It's okay. It's okay to doubt. Just do not let the doubt overrule you. And you know, of course, there are things that you have to do to get yourself back into that place where you can catch your breath again and get back to where you were. And when you do, then you're off and running again. I think as we learn, we have to learn how to do that. And the faster we can learn how to do that, and the faster we can learn how to do that faster, the better off we are as well, because we spend less time. Is there maybe a time when those things would come and we could throw them away immediately as nothing and just let it go and let it, acknowledge it? Okay, I recognize that's depression. I acknowledge you and I let you go. But I think for any of you that have experienced emotions, I shared it, and my granddaughter used it, and she so blessed me by telling me how a principle that I had shared, how it worked at her work when she took something simple and she applied it. And poof, it fixed the system. Now, we have to do that every time with every situation, every day. And so it's not like, okay, you had a victory and that's the end. It's not the end. It's just simply the end of that victory. It's also the beginning of the next one. And so as we become this light that we already are, yet we have no perception of it. So we have to awaken. And as I've shared with you guys in the past, I don't know that everybody really maybe sees this picture, but awakening, I don't think is a one-off. Maybe if you want to pick one specific thing and say, I awoken to that, and that's the thing. But I see this life journey as an ongoing life journey that you never get to the end of. Buddha never reached, even though he became enlightened, he never reached the full. Because only the full can be the full. The only way that we get to return to the all and be the full is when we go through the monad back into the one, the all. And we can get there. I read to you, I showed you where God created a game. I pondered on this in a situation today, and I said, you know, you created this game for us to find out who are the ones that are willing to fight their way back to you. And most won't. Most won't. I'm sorrowful, but they just won't. Because it takes everything from you that exists. You must die in a million ways every day. And most people are not interested. It's sad, but that is the truth. And so, if I can come to the place that I understand that perception isn't just a word. Perception is a way of being. Okay? It is a way of being. My being is perceiving. I don't just open my eyes mindlessly and look around and see superficial things. I open my heart spiritually and I look around and I perceive spiritual things. It's different than maybe what you thought. And that's why so many people believe that they are something when in reality they're no more than any other person that exists on this earth, good or bad. And so, I don't know about you, but that's very empowering to me when I recognize that it is all up to me and it's totally in my hands to take this concept. Am I willing to be alert? Am I willing to be aware? Am I willing to focus my mind on the things? Thank God for the pieces that have been given to me when I get discouraged, when I get weak, when I get human, when the human grows. And I take those tools and I bring them back into my remembering. I become aware of them all over again. And one thing I love about Source is that becoming aware of a truth, it just ignites that truth all over in you. And so maybe if you didn't have much ignition in the first place, it won't help that much. But if something inflamed you, and most things do for me, then when I bring that back, then it just changes the dynamics of everything. And so Yeshua tells us that we are the light. But here's the question I'd like to ask tonight. Do you perceive the light? Ask yourself about yourself. Because I have to tell you, if you haven't focused on seeing the light in yourself, you haven't accomplished anything. So you must look at the shadow. You must embrace it. You must acknowledge it's there. I'm a liar. I'm a thief. I'm a cheat. I'm a hard heart. Whatever it is, and be honest about it. It's the only way that it'll ever dissipate. Otherwise, you stay in constant resistance, and the universe isn't listening to you. What it hears is radio noise coming from your frequency. And so when I speak about coherence, maybe I've said in the past that this is a 10,000-year journey that we're on, and hopefully every week we learn a piece, but I know that's unrealistic as well, simply because of the hugeness of it. But can you perceive? I don't think most people have a problem perceiving the bad things. That's what they work so hard to hide. But can you perceive the concept that you are light? And some have differing opinions. They have different versions of what that is. Of course, you can learn a lot. If you know a lot, you can listen and you hear all kinds of things and you go, okay, well, that's your picture, but maybe there's something else you need to look at. And so we go along, but if there was anything that you could give to yourself and anything you could also give to humanity, these people that I were talking about that are now starting to incarnate in people, they can't wait. Okay, so I'll just tell you at a level spiritually where we are in reality. There's been many prophecies that chaos and all this stuff, and it's already started. And yes, we are powerful, and yes, we are light, but I know that most of you probably really haven't spent much time trying to even look for the things that I've talked about the prophecies and what's supposed to be in our time, and you let somebody else do that work, and then you suck a little bit, and that's it. And folks, this is not that kind of time anymore. This is not Religion 101 as it's always been. Okay? This is real deal, and there are going to be people who, because they never found the truth in them, that suffer because of it. And I'm not talking physical, I'm talking spiritual. Dolores Cannon said that the only safety net we have for the chaos that is coming is inside of us. Well, there's lots of people and lots of things, lots of mystic gurus, and Yeshua is one of them, who told us that there were going to be people that were lost. Nobody wants to hear that because, and especially what I find is the ones who want to hear that the least are the ones who do the least. Because inside of them, they have the same higher consciousness that I do. And that higher consciousness is trying as hard as hell to go, listen to this guy, he's telling you the truth. And that the resistance is what destroys. And so it's not always accidental. Sometimes it's a lot more intentional, I think, than people really realize, the resistance. They're not doing it because they act like it's somebody, or the guy said something that offended me. I'm so thankful Source has made it very clear that I am to be authentic and to be me and not worry about what people think about that. It's irrelevant what they think. Wow. I told you I've heard he's been sharing some really, really very good guiding steps, because I guess there's people that aren't as real as they think they are. And so to perceive is to see something that maybe other people can't, but even if other people can, the fact remains that you do. Whether they do or don't is kind of irrelevant. But if you're perceiving it, then there are other enlightened beings who are perceiving it as well. And so the question was posed, which needs the perception, which I'm talking about, to help launch people into a more powerful and peaceful walk with Source, even though you go through untold hell to get there. And if you don't know that the dark night of the soul is a real thing, you ought to go read what Carl Jung said, because he was absolutely on the money. And you won't make it without going through it. And so all the people who think they're sliding by on the smooth are lost. So here's the reality, friends. Do you see the light in you? Because I can tell you honestly, and it doesn't mean you're never gonna fail, because you are. It doesn't mean that you're gonna go to hell because you failed. You can put yourself in hell because of your failure, but that also is a choice. But on the other side, do you see the light that you are? If you do see it, well, then it will be manifesting and other people will see it as well. Once again, doesn't mean you're perfect. Doesn't mean that you're never going to make failings. It simply means that there is some kind of spiritual marked change. And I love it so much when I get people that I've met one time and I talk to them and they say, wow, your words are just reverberating in me. Just because somebody doesn't, if you speak to 20 people and 20 people reverberate and you talk to 2 people and they're not resonating, who should you worry with? You worry with those that are resonating. They're the ones that are ready. These may or may not make it. Many won't. Some will. And so, as we come to a place, obviously the purpose of our light is to help bring all humanity to a place of higher consciousness. And we do have power simply by being in a room. We do have power simply by speaking words and putting truths out there for people to go and question. One story I heard, a brother that I know, he spoke to a friend, had a conversation about the things he's been learning, and see, it's a one out of how many ever. But most people that you would have that with, they go, uh-huh, and walk away, and that's the end of it. But it wasn't with this guy. This guy came back just absolutely blown away that what he had told him, he went and researched and found out that what he was saying was true. And so there is no other purpose for your light to shine than for the good of mankind. And if you're still functioning thinking this is all about you, then you're not going to be walking in the path in the good way, because your ego is still driving you. And we must learn to lose our egos. You're not better than anybody. You're not better than anybody, ever, and never have been. And until you accept that, you'll continue on the rat wheel that you're on. Now, I know that I said that a little forceful, and that's not to fuss at anybody, but this is going to be one of the most destructive devices that we use against ourselves, if you will, because it's our ego, and we refuse to let it go. And so he tells us that we are the light, and I posed the question initially, do you see it in yourself? Do you see the changes? It's wonderful, and I love it when other people tell me how much of a change they see, how much my words affect, and those are wonderful things. But I'll tell you what's more beautiful than that is when I recognize the things that are different. And for you, when you recognize, when you go, wow, I know how I would have used to handled that. And every now and then, I have to be honest, the old self jumps up, and then you feel horrible about it, and then you have to go through that whole step, and then you're back to, please, if you're one of those people that is very sensitive to the Spirit like I am, please give yourself the leeway. You're going to make the mistakes, and they're going to make you feel horrible. Other people will make them and have no conscience of it. That's okay that they do that, and for you that are sensitive, it's okay that you don't. Just give yourself the leeway to recognize that we're still humans. We're still living in this physical body, and this physical body has more control than we want to admit oftentimes. We find that lusts and desires and all of those things, those are going to be the things that destroy. And that carries true through the whole Bible, as well as the Nag Hammadi text. So there are pieces of this thing that Christianity drew with it, for whatever reason, good, bad, indifferent, on purpose, accidentally. You know, I wasn't there. I can't give you those answers. But the truth of the matter is, folks, is that the first perception you must have is that you must see this in yourself. So if I was to put somebody off on the week for something to look for this week that might help you grow spiritually, I would say, why don't you spend the time in love and peace and kindness, with everybody else as much as you can. Paul said, as much as is within you, and sometimes there's not much. But you still need to do what you're capable of walking in peace, but more than anything with yourself. Because people around you, as you change circumstances, people and circumstances around you will change. The one constant in that is that you will always have yourself that you have to deal with. And so when you accept responsibility for that and you quit running and you quit resisting, you'll find a lot. Resistance, it manifests in lots of ways, and it's one of the most horribly destructive things that we use against ourselves. It is self-sabotage. Because as long as you're resisting, you're in resistance to the Spirit. That's why I said, and I always have, and it's love and it's kindness, when I tell you, just because something doesn't resonate with you does not mean that what's been said is not true. And that's really a far concept, and there's certainly lots of people that'll tell you that, and that's all good and well. But I just know that I've heard a lot of truths, folks, that set me on edge and made me go backwards to my knees. And it didn't resonate with me at that level as something that I wanted to hear. It did resonate with me that it was truth. And so probably the same people that go away because they don't want to hear it, it's just as much proof that that's what caused them to do so, is because they didn't want to hear it. Not that it wasn't true, that they didn't want to hear it. And so as we are the light, then we are also to be the light. And that those aren't the same statement. You already are the light, but you haven't been the light. Now it's time for you to begin to be the light. And that's a whole nother step. That's a whole nother piece of the journey. When you quit coming to, so we have original awakening. Oh, there's something I'm supposed to remember. And I'm so thankful for every person I've ever watched, every spiritual person I've ever talked to. I am so thankful for them telling me that, because the first thing that I had to do was get a hold of this concept that there was something that I needed to remember. I thought I had it all, right? That was Christianity. I had all the answers. And then I found out that wasn't all the answers. And so as we continue to grow along, we're going to constantly come to awakening stages, I call them, where you enter into a new perception, a new awareness. Each one of these is a new realm for your individual journey. The experience that you're having, it is another step. It is, if it was a book, it would be another chapter. And you come to a perception, and all of a sudden, everything stays the same, and yet everything has changed. For many people, I've heard stories of people who've been friends for 35 years with somebody, and they started a light awakening, and all of a sudden, within 6 months, they couldn't stand the person. Why? Because they finally saw what that person really was. And that works both ways, both good and bad. An enlightened person encounters that more than an unenlightened person does, because they're more prone to tell the truth to people that don't want to hear it. So when you find the people like the brother I was talking about, and they do want to hear it, then that's a signal to you. And so I'm also sending these words to the brother I had the conversation with. I'm also sending the words to you that that's a sign from the universe, and for each and every one of you out there. Maybe it's your grandkids. Maybe one grandkid will listen and the others won't. Don't quit telling all of them, but you also need to pay attention to that. But you also need to pay attention to the ones who act like they're not listening, and yet they are. So it really affects us in every area. And if we're not being light, friends, then we either have stopped our journey, and sometimes people do that, I think. They go for a little while, and they're like, well, I'll go this far, and then I'm not going any further. And we saw that in Christianity multiple times. People that would say, okay, well, I'll go this far. I lost a person in my church in Austin when we started all of a sudden getting the Moses mindset. And the statement was made, well, I ain't coming back to this church if they take their shoes off, because the ground is holy. And what did we do the next week? We walked right out there and took our shoes off, and poof, she was gone. Okay, it's all right. She didn't need to be there, and we needed to do exactly what we did. So it really does. It's not about making people accept the light. The point is for you to show the light, not to make them accept it, not to judge them if they don't. Because oftentimes that just simply indicates that there was not this frequency connection at this time. You never know what bad things might happen to that person and will radically change their life, and you'll see them 2 years from now and they're as spiritual as anybody that you know. So I think there again, with friends, co-workers, people, wherever you encounter them, whether it's standing at the counter in a store and you have a conversation, or talking to an eye doctor, it doesn't matter. Wherever you are, your job, your only sole purpose for being alive is to expose the light that is in you in this experience you call human. So I hope that you will take some of that. I hope you will allow yourself to breathe in that. But if you will, take that one concept and remind yourself tomorrow, every day, multiple times, I would hope, that it's not about me finding the light, it's about me showing the light. And then begin to do that. And you'll be amazed at the supernatural things that'll happen. Synchronicities will increase. People will begin to come into your life. Is it going to look like you wanted? No. Is it going to be just like you wanted? No. I can promise you that our perception from a human perspective is very seldom the spirit realm's perspective. But you had a concept and you had a picture that you were looking for. And so inevitably they will meet and they will link up and it will work perfectly, and you'll go, oh my, that's what he meant when he told me that. And so I hope you guys will let him tell you that. It's a really wonderful time. It's a really full time. It's a very chaotic time. Don't think that all of this stuff that's going on with war and all of this stuff is all part of it. Okay? It is all part of it. It's been coming. It's coming now. The derision and chaos has not manifested solely and completely, which it will. And the only thing that's going to get you out is, have you learned enough how to stay, first get to high frequency, base frequency if you would, and then have you learned how to maintain that? And when you fall out of that, have you learned how to quickly get yourself back there? And so those are some of the things that I'm learning and seeing are very, it's not about if you fall, it's about how quickly can you gather yourself back up in the right perspective, step back in, and continue on. How often do you look at yourself and go, wow, man, I know how I would have handled that situation a year ago. And so that is being the light. It's not that you're perfect. It's that you are working towards exposing your light, your goodness, your truth all over this world. And that's what we were called to do if we are called light workers. And so I hope that you'll take advantage of that. It's really a huge message. It's a kind message. It's a good message. But it is certainly pertinent for the time in which we live in. Are you being the light? What an amazing question for us to ask ourselves. And I'll tell you what's even more amazing is when you begin to answer it yourself in honesty and in purity. Of course, you always have to have those things. But when you begin to do it in that way, then you begin to see, and you're beginning to manifest the light of God on this earth. It's amazing, wonderful, beautiful, what it was all about. And so peace to each and every one of you. Shalom. I hope that you guys will continue to grow. For those of you, thank you. I'll take all the positive comments, all the kind words that you have to share. But we're going to continue on the journey, no matter whether that comes or whether that doesn't. It's just a very nice thing when it happens. And so peace to each and every one of you. Love to you. I hope you guys will grow. I hope you'll learn how to love in new and phenomenal ways. True love, not man love. And so they don't always look the same. And so blessings and peace to you. Namaste and shalom.